Elliot Rowe, a millionaire known for his wealth but lacking in personal connection, hires a humble cleaner, Maria Alvarez, to tidy up his luxurious mansion. He rarely interacts with her, as he's always busy with work and hardly at home. One day, he returns earlier than expected, and what he witnesses stops his heart. Maria and his 8-year-old son, Max, are engaged in a situation that unravels more than he ever thought possible. Was this a betrayal, or was there something he had been missing all along? Title: A millionaire hired a humble cleaner to clean his mansion. One day, he came home early and was paralyzed when he saw what she had done to his 8-year-old son. Elliot Rowe had it all: wealth, a towering mansion in the most prestigious neighborhood, an array of luxury cars, and a successful business empire. But behind his luxurious life was emptiness. His wife, Clara, had died unexpectedly 4 years ago, leaving him with their only son, Max. Though he loved Max, Elliot found himself distancing from his son, drowning in his work to avoid the grief that came with raising a child alone. Max had grown up lonely, his father's mansion becoming a gilded cage. He spent his days alone, with only nannies and hired help to look after him. Max was a quiet, introspective child, deeply affected by the loss of his mother, but Elliot, blind to his son's emotional needs, failed to notice how distant they had become. It was around this time that Maria Alvarez entered their lives. A middle-aged woman of humble origins, Maria had been hired to clean the mansion. Her job was simple: she arrived each day to maintain the spotless perfection of Elliot's home. Maria had an aura of calm, and though Elliot barely paid attention to her, Max seemed to gravitate toward her presence. Maria came from a small town, a world far removed from the grandeur of Elliot's mansion. She had worked hard all her life, providing for her 2 children who had since grown up and left home. Maria wasn't just diligent, she was perceptive, empathetic, and carried a quiet wisdom that came from years of hardship. She treated her work with care, not because she needed approval, but because it was in her nature to leave things better than she found them. From the moment Maria set foot in the mansion, she noticed the loneliness that lingered in the air. The place was spotless, but cold. What caught her attention most, however, was young Max. She could see in his eyes that he was lonely, yearning for a connection that his father was too preoccupied to give. As days turned into weeks, Max started to linger in rooms where Maria cleaned, at first just watching her in silence, then slowly starting to talk. He would ask her about her day, about the outside world, and soon their small conversations turned into something deeper. Maria never overstepped her role, but she found herself feeling for Max in a way that went beyond her duties as a cleaner. She saw the lost boy who reminded her of her own children at that age. As their bond grew, Maria became a quiet presence of comfort in Max's life, a maternal figure that he had desperately been missing. Elliot had been away for a business trip that weekend, leaving Maria to tend to the house as usual. But that particular day, the meeting was cancelled, and Elliot, exhausted, decided to return home early. As he entered the grand hallway, he was greeted by an eerie silence. The house felt still, too still, and he could sense that something was off. He walked further into the house, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. When he reached Max's room, the door was slightly ajar, and Elliot's pulse quickened. What he saw inside froze him in place. There was Maria, kneeling next to Max, but the boy's face was pale, his eyes wide open in fear. He was trembling, his small body locked in a position that seemed unnatural. Maria, though calm, had an expression that Elliot couldn't immediately read. Was it concern, or something more sinister? Elliot rushed into the room, his heart pounding in his chest. "What are you doing to my son?" he demanded, his voice breaking with a mixture of fear and fury. Max, seemingly in a state of shock, didn't respond, and Maria slowly turned to face Elliot. "Mr. Rowe, please," she said softly, her voice filled with a plea he couldn't yet understand. "Max. He's not well." Elliot's mind raced, unable to process what was happening. Had she hurt him? Why was Max frozen like this, trembling in fear? The thought that Maria, someone he had trusted in his home, could harm his child sent Elliot into a spiral of rage. But before Elliot could react further, Maria gently reached out toward Max, and something remarkable happened. Max, who had been stiff and trembling, suddenly collapsed into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. The boy clung to her like she was his lifeline, and Maria held him, whispering softly in Spanish, her voice a balm to his terrified soul. "What did you do to him?" Elliot demanded again, though the scene unfolding before him made no sense. "Nothing, Mr. Rowe," Maria said quietly, her voice steady but sad. "He's been having these panic attacks for months. I've seen them before, but today it was worse. He needed someone. He needs you." Elliot stood, dumbfounded. "Panic attacks," he echoed, as though the words themselves were foreign to him. Maria nodded. "Max is scared. He's been scared for a long time. He misses his mother, and he feels alone. I've tried to comfort him when I can, but I'm not his mother. He needs you." Elliot's mind reeled. Panic attacks? He had no idea Max was suffering like this. He had assumed that the nannies, the private tutors, and all the comforts he provided were enough. But in this moment, as he watched his son break down in the arms of the woman he had hired to clean his house, Elliot realized that he had failed his son in the worst way. Elliot, overwhelmed by guilt, knelt down beside Max and Maria. He reached out tentatively, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. Max flinched at first, but when he realized it was his father, he looked up, his eyes red and swollen. "I'm sorry, Max," Elliot whispered, his voice trembling. "I didn't know. I should have been there for you." Max looked at his father, a mix of confusion and longing in his eyes. "Why weren't you?" he asked, his voice small and broken. Elliot had no answer, no excuse. He had been running from his own grief, from the loss of his wife, and in doing so, he had abandoned his son to face his pain alone. The weight of that realization crushed him. Maria, still holding Max, looked at Elliot with a quiet understanding. She knew what it was like to lose someone, to be left behind in the wake of grief. But she also knew that this was a moment for Elliot and Max to heal. "I'll give you both some time," she said softly, standing up and quietly leaving the room, giving the father and son the space they so desperately needed. In the days that followed, Elliot began to rebuild his relationship with Max. He started spending more time at home, getting to know his son again, listening to him, and being present in ways he hadn't been since Clara's death. It wasn't easy, there were still moments of awkwardness, of distance, but slowly, Max began to trust his father again. Elliot also grew closer to Maria. He realized how much she had done for his son, how much she had been there when he wasn't. Their relationship, once strictly employer and employee, evolved into something more respectful, even familial. Maria became not just the woman who cleaned his house, but a pillar in both his and Max's lives. Months passed, and though the mansion was still a place of wealth and luxury, it no longer felt as cold as it once had. Elliot, Max, and Maria had formed an unlikely bond, three people from vastly different worlds, brought together by tragedy but united by a shared desire for healing. Max's panic attacks became less frequent, and when they did occur, Elliot was there to hold him, just as Maria had done that day. And though the pain of losing Clara would never fully go away, Elliot had finally learned that love, even in its most broken forms, was the key to mending the pieces of their shattered lives. Maria continued to work for the Rowe family, but her role had changed. She was no longer just the cleaner, she was a part of their family, someone who had seen their darkness and helped bring them back into the light. In the end, Elliot realized that money couldn't buy what mattered most. It was the people in your life, the connections you made, and the love you shared that truly made a house a home. The end. In the glimmering city of Ebrington, where skyscrapers pierce the heavens and technology reshapes the world daily, lived a tech millionaire, Adrian Cross, whose innovative mind had made him a household name. Known for his brilliance but cursed with loneliness, Adrian's heart craved something money couldn't buy: authentic love. He hired a poor woman, Ella Doone, to be his girlfriend for a high society event. Little did he know, Ella's fiery words at a simple dinner table would unravel secrets that could bring his empire crumbling and turn their contract into a roller coaster of tragedy, redemption, and unexpected love. Adrian Cross was a prodigy of technology. By 30, he had revolutionized artificial intelligence, making millions. But beneath his polished exterior and suave charisma lay scars of a lonely childhood and betrayals that had rendered him distrustful of people's intentions. The upcoming annual gala hosted by Ebrington's elite loomed large. To keep up appearances, Adrian needed a companion, someone who could charm without expectations of commitment. A colleague recommended an unconventional agency specializing in discreet, companionship contracts. Ella Doone, a waitress struggling to make ends meet, lived in a crumbling part of Ebrington. A talented artist with dreams she had long buried, Ella was pragmatic and sharp-witted. When she stumbled upon the ad for a temporary companion job with an eye-popping payout, she reluctantly applied. Her goal? Pay her debts and leave the suffocating city behind. Their meeting was formal. Adrian laid out the contract, emphasizing the boundaries: no personal questions, no emotional involvement, and absolute discretion. Ella, unfazed, signed the papers with a wry smile, masking her unease at entering his opulent but cold world. Adrian invited Ella to a dinner with prominent tech magnates before the gala. Her role was simple: smile, nod, and blend in. But Ella's authenticity clashed with the superficial world Adrian inhabited. At dinner, when an influential investor belittled artists as useless dreamers, Ella's retort, sharp, eloquent, and unfiltered, stunned everyone. Adrian, though initially furious, found himself intrigued. Ella's words resonated, challenging the very cynicism he had adopted. Yet, her boldness also put a target on his back. Ella's moment of defiance earned her both admiration and enemies. The investor she confronted, Victor Henshaw, was one of Adrian's top stakeholders. Victor warned Adrian that associating with someone like Ella could damage his reputation. Meanwhile, the media began speculating about their relationship, escalating tensions. Adrian's facade started to crack. He began questioning his choices and the loneliness that had driven him to hire Ella. For her part, Ella struggled with guilt and confusion. She hadn't expected to see glimpses of vulnerability in Adrian or feel drawn to the man behind the mask. As their public appearances continued, Ella accidentally discovered a hidden project Adrian had been working on, a revolutionary AI capable of manipulating human emotions. Adrian admitted it was designed to help people understand empathy but was being exploited by Victor for sinister purposes. Ella urged Adrian to expose Victor, but he hesitated, fearing the consequences. Their relationship, once strictly transactional, grew complicated. Adrian admired Ella's courage, while Ella saw the man Adrian could become if he faced his demons. At the gala, Adrian unveiled his AI project, defying Victor's orders to keep it secret. However, Victor retaliated by leaking Ella's financial struggles and their contract to the press, framing her as a gold digger. Overnight, Ella became the center of a scandal. Betrayed and humiliated, Ella confronted Adrian, accusing him of using her as a pawn. Adrian, devastated, realized he had to make a choice: protect his empire or fight for Ella and his own integrity. Adrian decided to expose Victor, risking his career and fortune. In a dramatic press conference, he revealed the true purpose of his AI project and the unethical practices Victor had enforced. Adrian also admitted the truth about his arrangement with Ella, taking full responsibility. Meanwhile, Ella, overwhelmed by the media frenzy, returned to her small apartment, vowing never to trust anyone from Adrian's world again. But Adrian wasn't ready to let her go. Adrian's confession brought him both ruin and redemption. Victor was ousted, and Adrian's AI project was salvaged under ethical guidelines. However, Adrian's empire was irreparably damaged, forcing him to start over. He sought out Ella, not with promises of wealth but with an earnest apology and a desire to rebuild trust. Ella, moved but cautious, agreed to hear him out. Together, they navigated the fragile beginnings of a genuine relationship. Months later, Adrian launched a new initiative, funding grassroots artists like Ella. Ella, finally able to pursue her passion, created a series of paintings inspired by their journey. Their story became a testament to the power of vulnerability, resilience, and love that defied expectations. As the sun set over Ebrington, Ella and Adrian stood hand in hand, not as a millionaire and a hired girlfriend but as two souls who found hope in each other amidst the chaos. Ella's unfiltered honesty contrasted sharply with Adrian's carefully curated world. Adrian's journey from a cynical loner to a man willing to risk everything for love and integrity. Ella's determination to rise above her circumstances and redefine her worth. It was a chilly evening in the upscale neighborhood of Greenwood Estates. Nathaniel Carter, a self-made millionaire known for his expansive real estate empire, sat on the edge of his plush leather couch. His heart pounded as he rehearsed the words that had taken days to summon the courage to say. Across the room, his wife, Evelyn, was humming softly, her silhouette illuminated by the warm glow of the fireplace. She had always been the epitome of grace and composure, a woman who could walk into any room and command respect without saying a word. Nathaniel cleared his throat, his voice trembling as he spoke. "Evelyn, I need to tell you something. I've lost everything. The business, the properties, the investments, it's all gone. And I lost my job." Evelyn froze mid-hum, the gentle tune fading into a deafening silence. Her head turned slowly, her eyes meeting his. Nathaniel braced himself for tears, anger, or even accusations. Instead, her reaction was unexpected. She smiled. "Nathaniel, are you serious?" she asked softly, her tone devoid of panic or disbelief. He nodded, his throat too tight to speak. "Then we'll figure it out together," she said calmly, walking over to him and placing a hand on his shoulder. "You're not alone in this." Nathaniel blinked, stunned by her response. This was not the reaction he had prepared for. A cocktail of relief and confusion swirled within him as Evelyn's calm demeanor unsettled him more than any outburst could have. To understand Evelyn's reaction, one had to journey back 15 years to when they first met. Evelyn was the daughter of a struggling florist, and Nathaniel, a fresh college graduate with big dreams but empty pockets, had been one of her mother's customers. Despite their vastly different backgrounds, their love blossomed like the flowers Evelyn carefully arranged. They built their life together, starting with nothing but shared dreams and relentless determination. Evelyn worked multiple jobs to support Nathaniel as he started his first business. She was his sounding board, his confidant, and his unwavering pillar of strength. She had seen him rise from failure more times than she could count, and she believed in his ability to do it again. But this time, the stakes were different. This time, there was more at play than just financial ruin. But beneath her reassuring words lay an ocean of questions, fears, and secrets. As the days turned into weeks, Nathaniel's trust in Evelyn's composure began to waver. She continued to manage their household seamlessly, never once showing signs of stress. Yet, there were subtle changes he couldn't ignore. Late-night phone calls, whispered conversations, and unexplained absences began to creep into their once transparent relationship. One evening, Nathaniel decided to confront her. "Evelyn, you've been acting different lately. Is there something you're not telling me?" Her eyes flashed with a mix of surprise and guilt, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "Nathaniel, you're imagining things. I'm just trying to keep us afloat. That's all." But Nathaniel couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her story. His instincts told him to dig deeper, and when he did, he unearthed a truth that shook him to his core. As Nathaniel tried to process Evelyn's duplicity, another storm was brewing. The collapse of his business had not been accidental. Someone close to him had orchestrated his downfall. The discovery of forged documents and embezzled funds pointed to an inside job. And the prime suspect? His once trusted business partner, Marcus. Nathaniel's determination to rebuild was reignited, not just to regain his fortune but to uncover the truth and seek justice. Evelyn, despite her secrets, stood by his side, proving once again that their bond was stronger than the challenges they faced. As the couple embarked on a journey to reclaim their life, they faced betrayal, heartbreak, and danger at every turn. Marcus was not willing to go down without a fight, and his connections in the corporate world made him a formidable adversary. Evelyn's business also became a target, forcing her to rely on allies she had never anticipated. Amid the chaos, Nathaniel and Evelyn rediscovered the core of their relationship. They realized that their greatest asset was not wealth or success but their unwavering love and trust in each other. After months of battles, both personal and professional, Nathaniel and Evelyn emerged stronger than ever. They exposed Marcus's crimes, rebuilt their lives, and even started a foundation to help struggling entrepreneurs avoid the pitfalls they had faced. Sitting on the porch of their modest yet cozy new home, Nathaniel turned to Evelyn and said, "Losing everything was the best thing that ever happened to me. It reminded me of what truly matters." Evelyn smiled, her hand resting on his. "We're unstoppable together, Nathaniel. No matter what comes our way." And as the sun set on their tumultuous journey, they knew that their story was not one of loss but of rediscovery, resilience, and an unbreakable bond that no challenge could ever sever. Cameron Donovan, a self-made millionaire known for his cold precision and ruthless business acumen, has one person who softens his heart, his daughter, Evelyn. Her life has been one of privilege and ease, sheltered from the hardships her father had faced. But now, she is in love, and Cameron is suspicious of the young man, Daniel, who has captured her heart. He devises a scheme to uncover Daniel's true intentions, which will test both the depths of his daughter's love and the integrity of the man who claims to love her. Little does Cameron know that the outcome of this plan will lead to a revelation far more devastating than he could have ever imagined. Title: A millionaire forced his daughter to pretend to be poor to test her boyfriend's honesty. Upon seeing the young man's reaction, the millionaire was horrified. Cameron Donovan stood by the window of his lavish penthouse, looking out over the bustling city below. His sharp eyes scanned the streets, but his mind was elsewhere. Behind him, his daughter, Evelyn, sat on the plush leather couch, talking excitedly about her boyfriend, Daniel. Cameron listened, his face impassive, his thoughts racing. At 25, Evelyn was the light of his life. She was everything her mother had been: kind, compassionate, and trusting. Perhaps too trusting, Cameron thought grimly. As a man who had clawed his way to the top, he knew how easily people could be manipulated by money. And Daniel, with his modest upbringing and sudden affection for Evelyn, had Cameron's suspicions on high alert. "Daniel wants to meet you, Dad," Evelyn said, her blue eyes shining. "He really cares about me." Cameron nodded slowly. "I'm sure he does." His voice was even, but inside, a plan was forming. He wanted to believe that Daniel loved Evelyn for who she was, not for the wealth that surrounded her. But he needed proof that the young man's intentions were pure. "What if," Cameron began carefully, "you tested him?" Evelyn frowned, confusion crossing her delicate features. "Tested him? What do you mean?" Cameron turned to face her, his eyes calculating. "What if he didn't know you were wealthy? What if he thought you were just a regular girl, struggling to make ends meet? Would he still love you then?" Evelyn's face paled. "Dad, you can't be serious." "I am," Cameron said firmly. "If Daniel's feelings for you are real, they won't change. But if he's after your money, well, better to find out now than later." Evelyn hesitated, biting her lip. She loved Daniel, but the thought of deceiving him like this made her uncomfortable. Still, she trusted her father's judgment and didn't want to dismiss his concerns outright. "What do you want me to do?" she asked quietly. Cameron's plan was simple. Evelyn would move out of their penthouse and into a modest apartment in a run-down part of town. She would quit her high-paying job at her father's company and take on a minimum-wage job as a waitress. Daniel would believe that she had fallen on hard times, and his reaction would reveal the truth about his feelings. Reluctantly, Evelyn agreed to the plan, hoping that her father's test would prove Daniel's love once and for all. The transformation was immediate. Evelyn traded her designer clothes for thrift store finds and her luxury car for an old, beat-up sedan. Her new apartment was a far cry from the penthouse she had grown up in, small, cramped, and barely furnished. She started working long hours at a local diner, serving customers who barely looked at her. When she first told Daniel about her financial troubles, his reaction had been one of shock and concern. "Evelyn, why didn't you tell me sooner?" he had asked, his brow furrowed. "I had no idea things were so bad." Evelyn had played her part, explaining that her father had cut her off financially and that she was trying to make it on her own. Daniel had been supportive, insisting that they didn't need money to be happy. For a while, it seemed that Cameron's plan might prove him wrong. Maybe Daniel truly did love Evelyn for who she was, not what she had. But as the weeks passed, cracks began to appear. Daniel grew distant, spending less time with Evelyn and more time with his friends. He complained about the dingy apartment, the lack of comfort, and the fact that they couldn't go out to nice restaurants anymore. Evelyn, heartbroken, watched as the man she loved slowly drifted away, his affection replaced by frustration. One evening, after a particularly long shift at the diner, Evelyn came home to find Daniel packing his things. "I can't do this anymore, Evelyn," he said, his voice tired. "This isn't the life I signed up for." Evelyn's heart shattered. "But I thought you loved me," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I do," Daniel said, avoiding her gaze. "But love isn't enough. I need stability, security, things you can't give me anymore." Without another word, Daniel left, leaving Evelyn standing in the doorway, her world crumbling around her. When Cameron heard what had happened, he was horrified, not by Daniel's departure, but by the devastation it had caused his daughter. He had hoped to reveal Daniel's true nature, but he hadn't anticipated the toll it would take on Evelyn. She had always been strong, but now she was a shadow of her former self, her spirit broken by the betrayal. Cameron realized too late that his plan had been a mistake. He had been so focused on exposing Daniel's intentions that he hadn't considered the emotional cost to Evelyn. And worse, he hadn't counted on what came next. A few days after Daniel's departure, Cameron received a call from Evelyn's best friend, Sarah. "You need to come to the hospital," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "It's Evelyn," she tried to. Cameron didn't hear the rest. He dropped the phone and rushed to the hospital, his heart pounding in his chest. When he arrived, he found Evelyn lying in a hospital bed, pale and fragile. She had taken an overdose of sleeping pills, a desperate attempt to escape the pain that had consumed her. As Cameron sat by her bedside, guilt washed over him. This was his fault. He had pushed her into this, forced her to endure a test that had broken her. He had wanted to protect her, but in doing so, he had destroyed her. When Evelyn finally woke up, her eyes were filled with sadness and hurt. "Why did you do this to me, Dad?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cameron couldn't answer. He had no words to justify his actions, no way to take back the pain he had caused. All he could do was hold her hand and promise to make it right. In the months that followed, Cameron devoted himself to helping Evelyn heal. He hired the best therapists, gave her the space she needed, and most importantly, he apologized. For the first time in his life, he admitted that he had been wrong. Evelyn, though deeply hurt, slowly began to recover. She realized that her father's actions, while misguided, had come from a place of love. And while it would take time, their relationship began to heal as well. As for Daniel, he never came back. But Evelyn eventually realized that losing him was a blessing in disguise. His departure had shown her that she deserved better, someone who loved her for who she was, not for what she had. In the end, Cameron learned that love couldn't be tested or measured by material things. It was something far more complex, something that couldn't be manipulated or controlled. He had tried to protect his daughter, but in doing so, he had nearly lost her. And Evelyn, though forever changed by the experience, emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient than before. The test had failed, but the lessons it taught would stay with them both for the rest of their lives. The end.